Hello to everyone and welcome. My name is Rachel Sharon and I'm a health educator with Marshfield Clinic Health System and Wisconsin After School Network. I'll be moderating this behavioral health presentation on emotions today. We're pleased to be offering this presentation in partnership with Wisconsin Department of Children and Families. Just a few housekeeping things before we begin. Please make sure your microphones are on mute. And if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I will be watching them and we'll make sure that we try to get to those throughout the presentation and at the end. This presentation is being recorded and it will be sent to all registered participants, and we will also be posting this on our YouTube channel as well. So I'm pleased to introduce our presenter, Dr. Kelsey Offenwanger. Dr. Offenwanger joined the Marshfield Clinic Health System in 2017, and she's licensed in both Illinois and Wisconsin. Her child psychology practice focuses on collaboratively working with caregivers of children who experience behavioral difficulties, social challenges, and developmental concerns. Dr. Offenwanger provides consultation to families who have children on the autism spectrum and assists parents with navigating school resources. She participates on multidisciplinary teams within the Marshfield Clinic Health System to support collaboration of care. And she's presented nationally to a wide array of audiences across educational, community, and clinical settings. So if you'd like to hear her again, she'll be presenting very soon on emotional regulation skills for students and adults at Wisconsin Autism Society Annual Conference in April. So Dr. O, thank you again for being here, and I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope this to be a collaborative discussion, informative, and we'll be practicing different strategies to make sure that we're able to practice what we preach. So the title of today's presentation is Naming and Taming Emotions, Strategies that Work for Adults and Kids. Feel free to use the emotion button, feel free to use the chat option throughout the presentation. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. I do not have any disclosures or relevant financial interests to disclose today. And again, thank you for your time and attention as we get started. The learning objectives are going to focus on tools that will help improve our listening skills when working with youth, help us talk to kids about their feelings in non-threatening ways, and help us be mindful of our reactions and how to self-regulate when needed. So chasing the why, this is a term coined by Tina Bryson, who is part of the co-author of The Whole Brain Child with Dan Siegel, which is a great book out there that focuses on the very nuances of kids and the different behaviors that they may present. So chasing the why of this presentation and how it can be beneficial to our daily lives. So the American Academy of Pediatrics has declared that children's mental health is a national emergency. It talks about rising rates of teen suicide, mental health concerns that have worsened throughout the pandemic. We know that prior to the pandemic, these rates were rising and have only worsened. So ultimately, we're seeing not only in kids, adolescents, even young adults, that we're experiencing more anxiety, depression, anger, fear, hostility, and aggression. So it's across a spectrum of different reactions and behaviors that we're noticing. Again, focusing on why to do this. We've looked at some of the research, and the U.S. Surgeon General in the winter of 2021 issued his general advisory. And what it really talked about was, again, mental health concerns, health, wellness, and prevention, but it also encouraged young people and families to consider enrolling in after-school programs as a way to help build those healthy relationships and social connections. It recommended that community organizations implement evidence-based programs that promote healthy development, support children, youth, and their families, and increase their resilience. And it really talked about how after-school options are a great resource and outlet for those programs. So when looking at a little bit more at the after-school program, as we know, this is in partnership with the Wisconsin After School Network and our Center for Community Health Advancement. After-school programs provide rich opportunities to help provide students and kids with caring and supportive mentors, giving them safe spaces where they feel comfortable, a sense of belonging. We know that when it looks at resilience, a sense of belonging is tied to protective factors as kids age. It provides them with opportunities to work collaboratively, problem solve, think critically, and while it helps interpersonal skills and intrapersonal skills, such as gaining confidence and self control, navigating relationships, building those healthy relationships with adults and peers. It can also translate into that school setting with improving study and work habits, increasing grades, improving school attendance, and reducing some of those risky behaviors that we may see in those after school hours when limited support may be available at home, as well as supervision. So we looked at the why we may be doing this. We looked at the what can we help kids with? And ultimately, I wanted to focus on the who. So what are those kids out there that may benefit from helping manage their emotions? Who should we look out for? Who can some of these skills that we'll be talking about today be relevant for? And while I'd say they're relevant with all kids, adolescents, and adults, there may be some who may need them more than others. And some of those kids that we can keep an eye out throughout the presentation that may ring a bell in our mind to practice them with are those kids that tend to become upset or go to the yellow zone more quickly. We'll talk about the zones of regulation and what yellow means, but it's when we're starting to get frustrated and upset. In addition to kids who may have emotions that don't fit the size of the problem. We may have big reactions to something small that may happen. Their emotions may linger after the situation is really resolved. We think of those kids who go from 0 to 60 really quick, like a light switch. It's like we're walking on eggshells around them. Also, kids who may express emotions inappropriately. Is there a mismatch between the situation and how they're responding that may be inappropriate for their developmental level or their age? Thinking of kids who may withdraw or isolate when something appears difficult, may consistently make poor choices, or just have a negative complaint-focused demeanor. So those are some of the kids that could really benefit from the skills we're talking about. And I would really help encourage you to think about maybe a couple of kids that you can specifically use these skills with after the presentation. When diving into the how we do it, as I mentioned, Dr. Dan Siegel coined the phrase name it to tame it, and that's a picture of the book, The Whole Brain Child. Psychologist David Rock has some pretty awesome studies that are out there when talking about when you experience significant tension, especially anxiety, so internalizing concerns, you can reduce stress up to 50% by simply just noticing and naming your state. So by just naming out loud, I'm mad, I'm frustrated, I'm excited, it's helped validates what we're feeling and can help reduce the internal conflict that we have. In addition to author Mitch Ablett talked about taming reactive emotions. And when we can see the emotion, when we can put it outside of ourselves, we don't have to be that emotion. Oftentimes when working with kids, we talk about how the behavior is what we don't like. You are an awesome child. You are amazing. However, some of the choices that we make may not be so beneficial. And that's the same philosophy when we think about those emotions. When we can create some distance between ourselves and the emotion, we can help be able to tame that and work through it. So starting off, I mentioned that we're going to have it be interactive at times. We're going to practice some strategies at the beginning. I wanted to start off with the 3 Good Things tool. So researchers out of Duke University a while ago looked at a study that looked at positive emotions and mood. And what they challenged their participants to do was think of at least one good thing or positive thing a day. And they're supposed to do this for 30 days. So thinking about a month, thinking of good thing. It could be anything that brought them joy. And then what they did was they had pre and post tests. And what they found out after that month of those individuals who did think of a good thing or more good things a month, that their mood tended to improve. They tended to be more optimistic. They tended to recall more positive experiences. So that is something that I would like us all to try and do within this next kind of minute or two, is think of at least one good thing over the past week that made you feel calm, relaxed, joyful, compassionate. You can put it in the chat. You can think of it in your head. You could say it out loud to yourself or anyone else who may be around you, but try and think of one good thing from this past week. Exercise. Yes, that releases those natural feel good emotions inside our body. Thanks for sharing. Snuggling a baby, those babies snuggle, there's nothing like it. Winter bonfires. seeing our friends after winter break, reconnecting with others, just spending time with other people, whether it be friends, family, finishing a book, becoming a grandma, congratulations, going to the library, dancing, being silly. I love those moments when we can take our guard down and relax, watching a good show, taking a long walk, booking a vacation. Jenna, I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's always good to have something positive on the books or something good to look forward to. Reading our books, spending time with pets. Thank you all for engaging in that with me. The cool part about these good things or this tool is that oftentimes when we think of one good thing, we tend to think of more. We tend to smile, we tend to light up a bit. And just the act of smiling, again, helps release some of that serotonin that we talked about when we exercise as well. So this is a tool that you could use with family, friends, but ideally the students, the teens, the children that you work with to help them identify a positive emotion, to help them ideally think of more positive emotions. And if we could do this for one day for a month, especially across the school, the settings we work on, it could be quite powerful. So keep that in mind when we think about tools to use for the future and tools for your toolkit. All right, when talking about naming our emotions, it's getting it out, it's not holding it in. And what I really wanted to share is about how when we name our emotion, it causes us to pause and think. We have to say it out loud. We're thinking about what is going on. So it's slowing down our brain. It's helping calm our physiology to get us back to that green zone. It's taking us from a fight or flight state, that yellow zone, to one where our frontal lobe has a chance to kick into action. So it's helping increase the communication from our downstairs brain or our upstairs brain, the amygdala to the executive functioning at the beginning. So again, when we calm, when we name it, it slowly helps reduce that fight, flight, or freeze response. It helps us get our frontal lobe back on board where we can make some ideal decisions. And it helps bring some sense to a situation and allows us to process what was going on. So again, why are we getting upset? Is our situation and reaction matching the size of the problem? And all of this can start when we identify our emotion and are able to help communicate that more clearly. Emotions are bursts of energy within us, and ignoring them gives them power. I think it's awesome that there's this angry bird balloon out there because it ties right in with having hot air and our balloon getting so big that it may pop. So picture this, you can have your eyes open or closed, whatever you prefer, but our emotions are like a balloon. And every time we try to push them aside, it fills up more and more and more. So just imagine that balloon expanding as we keep our emotions in. Ultimately, that balloon is going to pop. It's just what's going to happen, or it's going to get defeated and deflate. So the tiniest thing, though, when we get pretty big, can really set us off. And that is our amygdala, so that downstairs part of our brain. It's the smoke detector. It's sounding the alarms that something is not right. There's good and bad things to that amygdala. So the primitive focus, it helps keep us safe. It helps us stay away from danger. However, it also can go off when something may not be a sense of danger. So for example, if the smoke detector is going off, it could be from the burnt popcorn in the microwave. If we see a puddle of water by the dishwasher, is it from it leaking, or did maybe our kid bring in snow and it melted all over? So that amygdala is our smoke detector. It sounds the alarms. And the more that we can have better control of when those alarms go off to not immediately react, the more we can decrease that 0 to 60, the more we can decrease that time in the red zone to be able to better process what is going on around us. Our mind and body are connected in many ways, and more research is showing the benefits of breath, being in tune with what is going on, and trying to take the time to identify how our feelings may be reacting within our physiology. So naming our emotion right after our body starts to react can help build that mind and body connection. It's showing us that we're getting yellow, we're getting red, and why might we be feeling this way? So an activity that you can do in practice, which we'll do coming up on the next slide, is thinking about how we name that emotion and how, again, we name it right after we start to have that reaction. Our fist clenching, our heart beating, we're starting to feel hot. That's our signs and clues. So we can think, my body is telling me I'm angry, I'm sad. We take that deep, slow breath in. We start to recognize that I'm having thoughts that this is upsetting. We start to take that next breath. We again feel anger, anger, anger. We may feel sad, sad, and sad. Our body inadvertently is going to start to slow down if we go through these steps. It is going to help calm us, which is quite powerful and reassuring. And it takes practice and it takes time. But that's a way that that mind and body can go hand in hand when we name that feeling and we tie a coping mechanism or technique with it, such as breathing and slowing down. So I like to fact check, and we're going to do this for ourselves. And you can tell me or just think about if it made a difference for you or not. Think of an emotion you may be feeling right now. And you can see on the right, we have our zones of regulation feeling wheel with the colors. Once you have that feeling, we're going to practice this together. And we're going to go through each step, and you can insert the feeling into those blank spots that you're having. All right. So beginning now, I think my body is telling me I'm feeling focused, content. I recognize I'm having thoughts about feeling focused and content. I feel focused. I'm content. I feel focused. My body is slowing down. I'm feeling actually a little bit more relaxed. So that's a way that you can tie in those feelings with our mind and body. And using your own emotion wheel, a visual that you may have in your room, classroom, office, or using one of these from the presentation today. Thank you all for doing that with me. All right, so we're talking about naming and taming emotions, but how exactly do we talk to kids about it? And I wanted to do some of those self-regulation strategies first, because it's so important that our cup is halfway-ish full in order for us to be able to be regulated and be in the right mental space to be able to talk with kids. So, simple fact, we all have feelings, pets, parents, kids, and they can be really tough to talk about, especially when we don't know what we're feeling. For my nerds out there who do like different words vocabulary, alexithymia is technically a word that means difficulty identifying, describing, and expressing emotions. So that could be one that you throw out at others. But ideally, it can be really tough. But the cool part, as I mentioned, is that we all have feelings and we can have different feelings too. And that is okay. And normalizing this with kids can be extremely helpful. All right, so talking about feelings is important, but hey, what's the downside if we don't talk about them? We practice the balloon where eventually they're likely going to pop, and avoiding something is likely going to make it come back stronger or bigger. So in this chart that you see, I have anxiety and time on the X and Y axis. So when we think about something that makes us feel anxious, such as maybe talking about our feelings or talking about our feelings to someone else, that anxiety is going to rise. We're going to feel uncomfortable. We're going to kind of reach our peak. If we avoid it, we say, nope, I'm not going to do it. Nope, okay, I'm just going to walk away. That anxiety is going to come down. We're going to have a sense of relief, which is nice in the moment. However, that anxiety is going to come back 10 times stronger the next time. It's going to be worse. And yes, we can avoid, and it will get better for the moment, but it's still going to come back. However, if we flip the script a bit, if we keep going through what makes us feel anxious, we ride that curve all the way up, it's gonna eventually come down. Our body won't let us stay in this heightened state. And when we have that same situation present in the future, it's not going to be as big, which is so exciting. So, thinking about anxiety and not avoiding, that if we continue to avoid, it's going to come back. We call that a rebound effect. When we try to over control or eliminate our thoughts or feelings, we tend to lose control over our ability to stay regulated. That could be a parallel when we think about we put certain limits in place. If we say no, we may have a kid fight us back 10 times harder or try and sneak to get it. So we want to try and address those head on. And ultimately, there isn't a delete button in our brain. So rather than trying to get rid of these uncomfortable thoughts, we want to change our relationship with them. We want to be non-judgmental. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just thoughts. So focusing on that a little bit and taking some techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a lot of things that are in our control and even more that are out. So the key part of this when talking about feelings, when talking about emotions, when taking that next step towards change is really focusing on what we can control and trying to let go of the things that we can't. And when we look within that circle, our attitude, our kindness, our grace, our skills, our knowledge, those are things that we can control and share. And all of you here today have different skills and knowledge that you possess that others can benefit from. All right, so I'm going to break this down by age a little bit and have it be a nice kind of trajectory chronologically. So when thinking about younger kids, developing emotions and language, someone mentioned kind of holding a baby. We know that babies and toddlers have feelings. They can't express them yet. Their language is still developing, and so is that emotional language, but this should not stop us from talking to them about it or sharing emotions with others. So again, they're going to experience strong emotions and understand a lot more before they can talk. So those receptive skills are still developing. And when we work with kids and we talk about sharing those emotions, especially adults too and teens, we want to remember that they're going to learn best when they're regulated or in that green zone. Trying to teach different skills or tools when we're yellow or frustrated isn't going to be as effective. So thinking of tips for the littles, I think emotions have done a great job with different emojis out there because kids are more familiar with them and we can tie them into how we're feeling. But showing an emotion, labeling and talking about it. You have a really big smile on your face. I bet you're excited to play outside in the snow. Or you look sad and have tears coming down. Is it because you bumped your head? So our observations are a great way to start talking about those to kids, to toddlers, and to elementary school kids. And the key part about this is kids do a really nice job as they get older telling us when they're wrong. And that's great. No, I'm not mad. I'm this. Oh, okay. You're feeling this. Thanks for letting me know. Thinking about not only noticing the emotions in the kids, but naming our emotions and what we see in others. Your brother looks really frustrated. I think it's because he can't have cookies right now. Or in shows pointing them out, Marshall looks really worried that Sky got hurt or Sky will get hurt. So pointing those, it doesn't mean that it has to be a dialogue back and forth. It doesn't mean that they really need to necessarily be paying attention, but the more we can sprinkle those little moments of naming emotions in others and why they may be feeling that way, it helps build that emotional language bank. As we know, kids learn through practice. So do we as adults, and helping explore them through play. So little kids develop a lot of skills that's related to emotional regulation, social communication, relationships, friendships through play activities. Singing, reading, puppets, Play-Doh, slime, shaving cream, any of the above. Having those interactions with others are a great way to help handle those frustrations, problem solve, and ideally start to name and tame those emotions when they come up. When thinking about the toddler to school age transition, everything we talked about before can still be used, but keeping in mind that kids are still learning to understand and manage their emotions at this age. And we all have different background experiences. So some kids may come into the after school setting or start school in kindergarten without really having much experience with others. So really talking about the emotions and characters could be a nice way to help bridge that gap and build those skills. So for example, look at Rubble's face. Oh, He looks so sad. Oh no, anger has flames on his head. He must be mad. Pointing those out a bit, drawing that conclusion of those facial nonverbal cues to what we think they may be experiencing is key. Because ideally, the more we model that, kids will hopefully start to be attuned to what they may be experiencing. Books are a phenomenal way to help sharing emotions. This could include kind of a book for the week, a theme for the week based on emotions, and there are lots out there. If you have any specific recommendations or questions for me related to a book about frustration tolerance or a book about someone who may be bossy, definitely reach out and let me know. I will try my best to get those to you and kind of share my resources. But some that I frequently use and thank others who are probably on this presentation who have shared them with me are A Little Spot of Emotion. There's a box set. And what's cool is it's quite interactive for the kids. So it gives active tools to practice, such as when there's anxiety, we have our hand and how we can blow those away. The what ifs are again great for anxiety and worries. The Color Monster and Feelings book too touch on a variety of feelings and are a great introduction. Another thing that we want to do, like I said, model for the kids that we're around, is how you notice of feelings. They can be quite surprised that adults feel mad, scared, worried at times. So the more that we can open up and own those feelings, it's going to help them realize that it's okay to have them too. So when I dropped that cup yesterday, I yelled really loudly. Does that ever happen to you when you make an oops and feel upset? You look really nervous. When I feel nervous, my stomach sometimes hurts. Does that happen to you? So again, that mind-body connection at times, but owning when we have feelings and relating that. And sometimes that's a nice way, such as in the books too, of when a character or someone else has that feeling. Kids may then identify having that feeling too, compared to just asking them upright. Breaking it down a bit. So the movie Inside Out is something that I use a lot within my practice and within the after school programs and curriculums that we use. It's a great introduction to feelings, and it's a great thing to watch together as a family recommendation too. But ideally, when we talk about feelings as colors, we can make them less confusing. It makes a little bit more sense and it's easy to identify. We talked about how it can be tough to come up with feelings on the fly, especially if we start to feel dysregulated. So when we can share a simple color, not only does that help the kid communicate what they're feeling, but as adults, it helps us understand. And there's a big difference between the yellow zone and the red zone and how we intervene or respond. And the great thing about these colors is that when we can identify what color they're in, there can be different strategies to get them back to green. So some scripts that you guys can use could be related to today. We're going to learn about 4 colors that we can use to talk about our feelings: blue, green, yellow, and red. It could be as simple as that. What color do you think red would be? Wait. Someone raises their hand. Oh, mad, you guessed it. You could also make this into more of an interactive activity for those different learners that may be more tactile or visual or auditory, and having different color cubes that each kid has. They can raise their hand what color they think a certain emotion is. They could write it down and guess what color an emotion is. So there's different ways to make this interactive, but talking about how introducing feelings as colors can help them make it easier to communicate. So exploring the 4. The zones of regulation was created by an occupational therapist and has been used widely throughout the country in therapeutic and school settings. There's lots of different visuals out there. I include the link at the end of the presentation, but you can also Google or create your own. But ideally, when we think about these 4 colors, the blue zone is when we are feeling bored, sad, sick, or tired. So I felt in the blue zone at school before, a way to ask for an example or to share an example. The green zone is when we're feeling happy, calm, and focused. It feels good to be green. We like to be green. And kids who aren't usually in the green zone, these might be some of the kids that we talked about who would be a good fit for learning this. The yellow zone is key. It's when we become too silly, maybe excited, frustrated, or annoyed. So this is when that emotional thermometer is rising. We're still in control, but it's getting hard to focus and listen. And when I say we're in the yellow zone, we still have some skills to work with. We can help our child, students, implement skills that they already know. So we don't want to teach anything in the yellow zone, but helping them grab those tools to use in the yellow zone to help them calm down and regulate. Because once we get to the red zone, and again, you can say, what's the red zone again? Oh, mad. You're right. It's mad. We're losing control. We're really upset when we're red, and it doesn't feel good to be red. And when we get to red, that's when we take a break. And for adults, that's helpful for us to know is that when they're in the red zone, talking, tools often is not going to be effective. It's how we can keep them safe, how we can give them their space, and how we know when they're getting back to yellow, green, or blue. And with that being said, this opens up a really nice opportunity when talking about these 4 colors to have tools under each to help them go from blue to green, maybe to help them stay green, but also when they're yellow and red. What is going to work well for that kid's toolkit when they start to experience those different feelings and emotions? And when kids can start identifying, I'm getting red, I go here, that's a nice plan. And when they get there, how do we know that they're ready to come back? Questions so far or in the chat about what we've talked about?
Not seeing any questions in the chat yet.
Great, thanks, Rachel. All right, so now since we talked about the 4 colors, talked about naming and taming our emotions through those colors, we're going to get a little bit more into the how again. So like anything, which is a great analogy to use with kids, practice, practice, practice. Yes, practicing our spelling words may be boring. However, the more we practice, we make some progress, which helps establish those habits and ideally better choices. So you can frame it to kids like just like we practice shooting a basketball, remembering the words to a song. The more we do it, the easier it becomes, the more natural it becomes. So I really like to preface that we're not going to be able to master these skills overnight. That as an adult, I'm going to help you work towards them. And that is, I think, the key is that it takes time, it takes practice. And the more we can practice it in the settings that we see those emotions flare up, the more effective they're going to be. And ideally, if kids can be able to learn and practice these skills after school, in school, at home, or somewhere else, they're more likely to use them. The book on the bottom left is called I'm Sad, which is by a New York Times bestselling author and comedian, Michael Black. There's also a book called I'm Bored that he wrote. So as another little resource, it's a good problem-solving way that I really like how it talks about, yes, the flamingo feels sad, and it's not necessarily the importance of cheering that flamingo up, but being there with that flamingo and watching them own their feelings, listening to their feelings too. So kids practicing what we preach is so important. And I wanted to share some examples with you all about different students using the colors with one another. And it's okay to use the color yellow, use the color red. I'm not going to push a kid to own their feelings with that exact emotion because that's intimidating. When they're feeling comfortable and ready, that is going to be great. So for example, I felt yellow when the timer ended because it wasn't my turn. When I told my teacher I was upset, she didn't yell at me and asked if I'd like to start first the next time. I felt red when I was told that I needed to clean up. I told the teacher I was getting red, and she let me take a break. She also helped me clean up when I was ready, so I didn't have to do it alone. So not only are we seeing kids use those colors, but use those colors and help problem solve with them. And as adults, if we're practicing teaching the colors to kids, we should be using those colors too. Because again, the more that we model, the more we practice what we preach, ideally those kids will pick up on it and then feel more comfortable sharing that too. All right. So when reviewing some of the things that we talked about with kids, we've mentioned that feelings can be hard to talk about. That's not surprising. It can be challenging for us as adults too. But having a visual to help kids identify their feelings can be helpful. Whether it's the true feeling of I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling worried, or it's a color. And colors are a great way, the younger they are, to help introduce those feelings and then build upon that repertoire of feeling words that then they can utilize across settings. When thinking about feelings, reviewing again that feelings are easier to talk about when we put them into colors: blue, green, yellow, and red. Some kids make it creative, like some of the ones I work with, that they may have their own purple zone or they may have a different color zone. That is absolutely great. If they want to expand on the colors, you guys want to use different colors that maybe align with your school mascots, school colors, community themes, go for it. These are some that I use that have been helpful. And reminding that that blue zone is when we are feeling bored, sad, sick, or tired. We're just kind of feeling down. The green zone is when we are feeling happy, calm, and focused. It's a good place to be. The yellow zone is when we are starting to become too silly, excited, frustrated, or annoyed. So we're starting to lose control in the yellow zone. Techniques and tools that kids already know can help be applied in this space. Don't try and teach anything new. The red zone is, again, when we flipped our lid, we're mad, the kid's about to lose control. It's a big problem that's going on. That's when we need to take that break. And ideally identifying where that kid can take that break ahead of time. So if they're at school, where can they go? Do they know where they can go? If we're at home, where could they stop, breathe, and take a break in a safe place for them? Is their safe place their room, mom and dad's room, grandma and grandpa's room? Where may that look like? So ideally, when we're in green, we are in the most control. And I think that really helps kids understand that, is when we can stay calm, happy, we feel good, we're in control, and we have a lot less worries. I'm a big fan, as I shared earlier, some scripts, because it can be tough to talk about on the fly. So feel free to copy and paste this. I know it's getting recorded, take a screenshot, but another great way just to introduce feelings for kids. So you can start off by saying, by owning our feelings and using I feel statements, we can feel better and give adults clues about what we're feeling. The more we talk about our feelings, the less scary it can feel. And if we don't know how we are feeling, we can always use a color: blue, green, yellow, or red. Just that simple phrase can be that nice introduction, and then going from there. All right, moving out of our younger kids into our adolescents and teens, I wanted to focus on some tools to help teens talk, adolescents talk. Maybe it's our young adults too that we may work with. The three tools that we're going to really focus on that have a lot of evidence behind them, as well as being effective strategies, include active listening, keeping our emotions in check, so being non-judgmental, and not lecturing or accusing. When thinking about these tools, I would really like you to take some time to try and reflect on your own experiences. When you were a teen, what was helpful, what wasn't? Thinking about how our teachers, parents, other adults in our lives communicated with us. I bet that the teens that we work with or interact with have likely had similar interactions and thoughts and feelings. So let's get started. Adolescents and teens. There's a book out there by Adele Faber. There's How to Talk So Teens Will Listen and Listen So Teens Will Talk. You're probably familiar with or have seen How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. There's audio versions of it as well. So a nice kind of resource if you wanted to look into it a little bit more, but it really talks about getting on their level, being non-judgmental, actively listening, and being creative in the ways that you communicate. But what I want to focus on here is that when teens and adults communicate better, when we're more effective, when we're more regulated, we can resolve conflicts that come up more easily and ideally have less of them throughout our weeks. And when we can start to establish those healthy boundaries, those healthy relationships and communication styles, teens are more likely to share their feelings, especially when something comes up that may be challenging or troubling. So when we have those open lines of communication established early, potentially distressing situations that may present are more likely to be shared. If a teen feels like we're not going to listen, we might criticize what they say, we're going to judge them, all we're going to do is try and give our advice, they're likely not going to open up about what's really going on or just choose not to share. So this really can help set the tone for those relationships. And it doesn't mean that relationships that we may have that are struggling right now cannot be changed. There's always room for change. And each day is a new day, which is so amazing. All right. So when thinking about active listening, it is a skill. And when I say it's a skill, like a lot of other things, it takes practice. This often isn't something that we learned in school. And we learned that we should listen, but what does that mean? So it isn't a surprise when we think about how often we say, listen to me. Why aren't you listening? Why don't you listen? What we need to make sure is that we are actively listening. We are actively observing. So we need to take that first step and practice what we preach. Active listening is when we are not thinking about anything else other than what is being said to us, which is tough, especially in this day and age when we have so many distractions going on. But what we're doing is we are looking at that child, teen, person in front of us, that young, vulnerable mind who has the courage just to be there with us. We are not talking when they are talking, we're listening. We're not trying to think of advice or whether what they're saying is true or false or why are they doing that. No. We don't have to agree or disagree with them. They just need to know that we hear what they're saying without any judgment. And it can be tough. We want to keep our emotions in check. Teens are inquisitive, they're creative, and they're great, I feel like, at picking up on nonverbal cues. So they gauge our reactions all the time. So we need to make sure that we are paying close attention to what we say and do, especially because teens notice that when they are sharing something that is important to them, they are more in tune with us. So we do not want to try to explain away their emotions, try and justify. We do want to try and understand why they feel the way they do. We can ask them WH questions, but the best thing to do is really reflect. I added this graph in there, which came out in the winter of 2022 and was conducted in the spring of 2022. And it just talks about teens that have used different social media platforms. And what kind of struck out to me was I could see the 70 and 60% ranges. But in 2022, 95% of teens, so teens are classified as individuals 13 to 17, have watched YouTube, have been on YouTube. And yes, we know we may use them for school different reasons, but 95% of teens have been on YouTube, let alone the other social media platforms. So again, there's different things that are coming up. There's different things that are going to pull their attention away from us. They're going to talk in other outlets, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. However, we also want to make sure that they're getting factual information, that they are staying safe and educating themselves. And again, the more they feel like they cannot talk to us or that we're going to judge what they say, the more likely they're going to turn to someone else. We want to be their safety net. So again, this is our opportunity to react in a non-judgmental way. Practice active listening. Like, we are just listening, which is actually pretty nice. We don't have to have the answers. We want to refrain from expressing our opinions. We just want to be there. And what we need to do too is respect their experiences and reflect back their words. I hear how upset you were when Olivia didn't include you. You really wanted to go to the party and didn't think it was fair you had to stay home. You think it's BS that you can't watch YouTube until 10. You just get mad. Yep, I get so mad. Yep, you just get so mad. So it's literally reflecting back their words. We're not agreeing or disagreeing. We're just letting them know that we hear you. We are there. We don't want to lecture or accuse. So when I asked to think back about your experiences as a teen, I wonder if anyone lectured or accused you and how it made you feel. As adults, as well as kids and teens, we tend to shy away or become defensive when conversations shift to blaming and shaming. If someone comes at us, well, why didn't you? We tend to retreat. We tend to either become quiet or explode. We don't want to put anyone else in this position, let alone the kids that we are with. No one needs to be right in a conversation. Again, we don't need to have an opinion. We're just listening. And I love this phrase, and I think it's so important that opinions are merely just owned and held by the person who has them. It's an opinion. And the great thing about our world is that we can have different ones. Ultimately, we should feel very fortunate to hear others' opinions, that they feel comfortable sharing that with us and praising them for their effort. It took a lot of courage to talk about how you were scared to confront that friend. Thanks for letting me know. And again, the value of our past mistakes tend to be more important and well appreciated when we don't have shame or blame attached. Over the past few years, face-to-face communication has definitely varied, as we saw in the previous slide with social media use increasing. And it's not surprising that some kids and adults might respond better through non-traditional ways of talking, meaning we don't have to be verbal in communicating our feelings expressively through that means. We could write, we can text it, we can type it up. I've had great success with this with kids when they're feeling frustrated or upset, is to get it out on paper. So writing about their feelings, emailing us, typing us could be a great way to help them take control. And again, we talked at the very beginning, separating ourselves from that feelings, getting it out. Just because we feel mad or angry doesn't mean that we have to stay mad or angry. And something that we talk about a lot is feeling rules. So you have a right to have your feelings, you have a right to share your feelings, and no one should tell you how to feel. Those are your feeling rules. And it's so important that we help kids with the tools to be able to share and express their feelings with us. I want to take a moment to talk about the mini milestone. Small changes can lead to huge results. And I think it's so important that we realize that change is not going to happen overnight. It's pattern of behaviors moving forward. And yes, there may be setbacks here or there, but those mini milestones of saying a feeling, acknowledging a feeling, noticing a feeling can be so important. And just listening and being there has a lot of power. Before I transition into some of our slides to the ends, I see that there are a couple comments in the chat. Rachel, do you mind sharing those with me?
We've got a question. It says, do you have a recommendation to color their feelings out for a 4 or 5-year-old? And then they're talking about how they will draw a flame and have them color the flame to get their anger out.
Yes. I feel for kids, anything that is a pictorial or a visual is going to be extremely helpful. So some of these concepts can be so abstract. So anything we can get out on paper and visually see that's more tangible is going to help make sense of our feelings. One of the things that can be quite simple to do is have like an outline of a person. And, you know, if we have big paper, we could actually do the outline of that kid, and then they could be life size and ideally kind of color in where they feel different emotions or feelings, where they may feel different stress. Or we talked about that mind body connection of, oh gosh, my tummy hurts when I feel angry. Let's color in your tummy. Where else may feel hurt? Or where else may we feel red? So kind of getting those feelings out and coloring them on a picture of a body can be really helpful. Having different feeling faces and having them color in what feeling face that they may have at different times can also be a great way. And I like the flames too. Here's a feeling for emotion. Let's color it in, scribble it in as hard as you can. Taking it a step further, depending on your setting, is you could rip it up. There's lots of cognitive behavioral therapy interventions that talk about writing out an emotion, writing out a feeling, and then ripping up that feeling tends to be quite cathartic. We tend to feel more relaxed afterwards. So draw that flame piece, scribble it in really, really hard, ideally with maybe a crayon, you know, and then rip it up and throw it away. We're letting it out. Other questions or comments?
No other questions, just we love the ideas.
Great. You're very welcome. All right. thinking of kind of wrapping up, I've talked about this topic related to some of my friends, colleagues on mentors on Facebook. And we can talk about different emotions. We can talk about what the evidence shows about what's going to be effective, but I also want to keep it real and talk about, there's different ways that we can help kids talk about their feelings, share their emotions with others. And so some great feedback that I received too that I think is helpful to share are different strategies. So for younger kids, I'm not sure if people are familiar with the turtle technique, but there's something called Tucker the Turtle, and you can Google it. There is actually research related to it out of the Florida Institute University out kind of on the east coast of Florida. And so pretty much it talks about when Tucker the Turtle, he gets mad, he goes into his shell, he takes 3 deep breaths, he comes up with idea before he comes out of his shell. So that can be a great technique if we're feeling scared or mad. Also, if you Google Tucker the Turtle, you'll see coloring sheets, you'll see a book, there's a YouTube video out there. But another way to kind of talk about emotions, and again, have it be a little bit more concrete and separated. We talked about feelings, making sure that we can have a feeling with a picture or an image. And again, that body outline too, how do we notice that? Getting down on kids' levels. The whole brain child talks a lot about kneeling or getting ideally below their eyesight to help decrease that perceived threat. So within our nature and back in that amygdala, we have these primal tendencies that when someone is above us or looking down on us, that we tend to feel threatened. We may not even know this is happening. And for kids, they often don't know. So again, the more we can get on kids' levels, the more we can get below them. I often say lay on the ground next to them and see how quickly their mood can change. It's pretty powerful. We talked about the size of the problem. So again, is the size of the reaction to a situation match the size of the problem? And if not, again, those are some good kids to work with these strategies on. Also, just taking the time to listen, taking the time to actively listen, even when you may be in a hurry or even when you may be busy. Those few seconds can be the changing point between a kid sharing something that's going on and keeping it aside. I can't tell you how many times that I've learned to really pause and wait in sessions, and it could be even a minute, which could be uncomfortable at times, but then that feeling comes up, or then they're willing to share that. So taking the time. I also think what's so important too is what not to do. So Dr. G, who was one of my mentors, he talked about how, not completely ignoring big feelings, not walking away is so powerful. Again, being there physically and mentally. Reviewing, repeating, and retaining the information. So ideally, I want to share just being kind to ourselves. Change is hard. Talking about feelings is difficult, especially when we have kids who may not want to talk about them. But knowing that when we actively listen and starting to build that into our practice, that it can really open doors for those small changes, those windows of opportunity, and ideally creating that safety net for our kids. We know emotions are going to become easier the more we talk about it, the more we practice it. Our kids and students want their voice to be heard. They want us to know what's going on. We just got to show them that we're going to be there. And that comes with accountability on our end. And ideally, you can be that person who changes that child, teen, that young adult's trajectory. All right, some resources that I have. There's Gizmo, and I don't know if you guys have heard of Gizmo Mental Health, but they have great resources in English and in Spanish. They have crossword puzzles, they have mental health plans, calming activities, but it's with a really cute, fluffy dog, as you can see, which again is a lot less threatening for kids and can be quite motivating to talk about. I included the zones of regulation, and there's also a YouTube video out there that some parents and kids created related specifically to naming and taming our emotions and examples of that. We also have additional resources with the Wisconsin After School Network. This is the first webinar series that we have as part of a collaboration with behavioral health. So there will be more to come that include podcasts, that include videos related to naming and taming our emotions, as well as different topics throughout the year. And lastly, I have a bunch of different resources that I included that you guys are more than welcome to use. And as Rachel mentioned previously, this is recorded, so you will have access to the recording as well. With that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and welcome any additional comments, chats, or if there's anything else that I can maybe look up for you and send your way.
I'm not seeing too many questions coming in, but there was somebody commented on Tucker's Eternal and how awesome and how that has been really successful in their program. So the recommendation was that they have little turtles for all of the kids that they can carry around, and then they also have big turtles and calming spaces. So they really took that idea and ran with it.
Wonderful. And the more that you can have different manipulatives, or again, a tangible, I have the inside out characters that are little kind of plushies, can help make it more real. Love the idea of the turtle. All right, well, I will stick around on here, Karen, for the next 5 minutes or so. And if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to stay on or let me know. Thank you everyone so much for attending. I really appreciate your time.
And just a reminder to everyone as well that if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to the Wisconsin After School Network. Like Dr. Offenwegner mentioned, this is just one in a very large series, and we're creating podcasts and videos that will be coming out in between now and our next webinar. So stay tuned and keep an eye in your inbox for all of those resources. Thank you again for your participation today. And thank you for all the work you do to serve families and children in Wisconsin.
And Rachel, but do you by chance know when the next webinar will be?
It will be in April, and the date is being finalized hopefully today. So we'll get that information out very shortly.
Ooh, Abby. So thinking about effective ways to make naming and taming emotions tangible for teenagers. You know, when I come to teenagers, I think less is more. So sticking to kind of like that mad, frustrated, upset, and how they want to label it. So sometimes when I think about anxiety, we'll kind of name that anxiety moment of what it is. You know, but what is a feeling that you are experiencing? Because it could be stressed, it could be overwhelmed, there could be a new fad word that's out there. So I would almost really focus on what are you experiencing? You know, and you could say you look mad, and oftentimes teams will come back at us and say, I'm not mad, I'm this. Oh, got it. Okay. You're feeling this. So I would kind of go with what they want to label it, what you're observing as well, and then going from there. Oftentimes too, with I feel like the teens, writing things down can be extremely helpful as well. So they may not even have to share it with us. You know, you don't have to tell me, but hey, maybe let's just take these next kind of few minutes and you write down whatever you feel like you need to write down to get it out. Sitting down, just kind of being there. Write down either what's happening or feeling. Like I said, there's that power in the presence of just sitting there and next to them. Thank you all for the wonderful comments. Well, I do not have anything else except for this morning. I will stick around for a little bit. And if you have any questions, there's an email in the chat. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.